Welcome to the Lindsay Hadley Podcast Show. I'm coming to you from the North Shore of Oahu, where weekly I interview some of the world's most inspiring people from business, philanthropy, and entertainment. I love collecting humans, and these are some of my favorites I've found along the way. This podcast is brought to us by Capita Financial Network.
Do you need help with the next steps of your financial plan? Think Capita. Capita is a financial network built around you. They have a team of financial advisors, CPAs, estate attorneys, Medicare providers, and Social Security experts to help you accomplish your financial goals. Call or schedule a complimentary consultation at 801-566-5058 or visit their website at capitafinancialnetwork.com. You can also check out their financial education podcast, The Financial Call, available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and YouTube.
Hi, welcome to the Lindsay Hadley Podcast Show. Today I'm excited to introduce our guest, Lee Benson. Lee is an author, a consultant, and an entrepreneur extraordinaire. I'm excited for Lee to share a little bit about his story in his new book, Your Most Important Number, and the methodology that he uses for people to achieve their, everything they want to in their business and in their lives. He's also now using the same strategies to help not only companies, but families, which I'm really excited to hear about. Lee, as a mother of 3 boys, and knowing that family is the most important thing there is in this life. What an incredibly cool segue for you to be taking all your knowledge and skill set and insights into. So Lee, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about you and your story that got you here, writing a book, and share whatever you want to about yourself. Our audience, I'm sure, will be thrilled to learn more.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm actually sitting here in Phoenix, Arizona in my home recording studio. So I've got a full live performance stage behind me. And this is actually where I recorded the audio book for Your Most Important Number, as well as the second book titled Value Creation Kid. And I've been on a 40-year journey on how to create value faster within organizations. And I've started 7 companies from scratch. I've had exits from a few $1 million to well into 9 figures. The 7th company that I have today is called Execute to Win, or ETW, and we help organizations improve their most important number. Another way to say it is we help organizations create value faster. And I would say that the primary job for every CEO or founder is to continually increase the value of their organization. And I've developed a way over the years, and this is kind of a 40-year overnight success story, if you will, to come up with a methodology that allows that to happen faster. And it works in for-profit companies as well as nonprofit organizations. And I've worked with hundreds of organizations, thousands of leaders, and I'm seeing it work virtually every single time. And hence I wrote the book, Your Most Important Number, to kind of outline what that whole process looks like, or methodology.
That is so exciting, Lee. With your experience, tell us a little bit about this methodology and how you came to realizing it was kind of, had so much there for you to kind of triple down in your career and make this your basic focus at this stage.
Yeah, sure. So I think everybody leading an organization, they're trying to get everybody aligned fully to create as much value as possible, whatever that happens to be. But it's always a struggle. It's a major struggle. And the largest company that I've started from scratch had a little over 500 employees. So how do you keep 500 employees fully aligned and working on stuff that really adds value? And one of the things I learned a long time ago is that traditional goal setting doesn't seem to stand the test of time. When I go in to a new client and I look at all the goals, and there could be 10 employees, 100, 10,000 employees, it doesn't matter. 90% plus of the goals just aren't very thoughtful. Everybody did what they thought they should put down, often put down what they knew they could accomplish, so it looked like they did what they said they would, but it really wasn't helping the organization. And sometimes CEOs will say, hey, everybody's hitting their goals, but the company isn't going anywhere. So why is that? And so there has to be a better way. And I set out to say, well, how do we get each team to design itself to create the most value possible? And when that value is created, that it improves the next team's up value all the way to the top of an organization. And the methodology I came up with, it's called the MIND methodology, which stands for Most Important Number in Drivers. And in this methodology, every team has one number that does two things. Above all others, it says they're winning or losing the game, and two, it drives the majority of the right behaviors. And so every team gets to kind of come up with this. And in the for-profit world, it's going to be some version of profit, or if they're capital intensive, it could be cash flow. In the nonprofit world, it's typically how they measure impact. Why is the world a better place? Because your nonprofit exists. They'll still measure lots of other things, but they only measure those things to help them make better decisions to improve their most important numbers. So if at the top of the organization, let's just say it's net profit because it's a for-profit organization, and let's say you've got 50, 100 employees or more, and you've got different functions. You have HR, you have marketing, you have sales, you have finance. Each of those functions or departments will come up with their own most important number. And my favorite one that I think really sets the example about coming up with the most important number that says you're winning or losing and drives the majority of the right behaviors is HR. Whenever I talk to HR leaders and I ask them, because the team needs to come up with their own number, what do you think that one number is for HR that says above all others you're winning or losing and, super important, will drive the majority of the right behaviors? They almost always instantly say one of two things. Well, it's either going to be retention or it's going to be engagement. That's why we're here as HR. We want to keep people and we want to have them engaged. It's like, okay, so let's play that out. Let's just pretend you hired me to run HR and you made my most important number retention. So I'm all about keeping people. And so 3 years later, I have 95% retention. I've kept just about everybody. Nobody in our industry has come close to the retention numbers that we have. Never mind that 75 or 80% of the people can't do what we hired them to do. But I kept everybody. So this is an example of not driving all the right behaviors. So a better, most important number, and I talk about this in my book, for HR would be the percentage of seats filled with capable people. And now we're going to really drive the right behaviors. If every role has clearly defined outcome-based responsibilities, maybe a list of capabilities required to achieve those, and we find people that can actually do that, what percentage of all the seats in the company are filled with people that are achieving their outcome-based responsibilities or over-delivering on them? And if you have 100 employees and 80 of them are doing it, you're 80%. Now we're driving a lot more of the right behaviors because we're going to recruit better, we're going to train better, we're going to give leaders the tools they need to continually develop their people going through. And so it's really important that each team comes up with their most important number that says above all others they're winning or losing, and they have a serious conversation around, well, if this is it, what's a list of behaviors it will drive that are going to be really good to create value? And what's a list of behaviors that could be sort of counterproductive to what's going on? Yeah. And once you go through that, again, with the MIND methodology, most important number and drivers. So for my team, what are all the categories of work that my team should be really good at leveraging to improve their most important number? And that's where we do our best work to improve it. So the beauty of this, it's super elegant, it's really simple. You look at any team, this is the score that says they're winning or losing, and I can see very clearly the best work they're doing to improve that number. And I can see that whether there's 3 teams or hundreds, if not thousands of teams in an organization and how it all bolts together. Super powerful, gets everybody focused on creating the most value possible that always sort of accretes up and creates the most value as an organization. Long answer, but that's it. It's a simple, elegant way of creating value with, team by team and as an entire organization.
So Lee, that's really phenomenal when you say that we have all kinds of assumptions when we're operating, like we're measuring the wrong things, we're asking the wrong questions. Even the idea that setting goals is actually highly ineffective because we're setting the wrong goals, it sounds like, is what you're really getting at. We need to understand the core measurements and what actually are the biggest indicators that drive business to be successful. So do you see themes then throughout different businesses? These are the themes you need, like you said, having the most competent people in positions. But what are some other kind of tried and true things that people should be looking for in their business or organization?
Yeah, great question. It's not so much that, oh, we have the right numbers, now everything's going to be fine. If it doesn't matter what the tools are, KPI, scoreboards, or, any other organizational tools, if the team members don't know which direction to turn the wrench, it really doesn't matter. So I'd say the biggest theme that I think every organization should focus on is developing their team members to create more and more value over time. So if you look at, there's planning in an organization, you can call it strategy sessions, et cetera. There's executing on strategy, there's leadership development, there's sales, there's marketing, there's a lot of activities that are important and common themes. Leadership is one of those that's just incredibly important. And most organizations don't have a definition of what it means to be a leader in their organization, which is interesting. Yeah, you want to be a leader. Well, what does it mean to be that? And I believe, what a leader should do, and I think the definition of a leader that applies to most organizations that I've worked with is they get results and they foster an environment where every team member is intrinsically motivated and empowered to create more value over time. So this is a value creation journey for every single team member within every organization. So what's the environment that we create that they're operating within to create value and developing themselves? And hopefully we get those rules of engagement that create this environment right enough to where they advance even faster. So leadership development's it's a really big one, and most aren't very intentional about it. So I think what I said there is that this is what it means to be a leader. Now, when you develop a leader, most organizations try to have a one-size-fits-all. Everybody read this book, or everybody go to this leadership course for 3 days. And one size doesn't fit all. The thing I really love about the MIND methodology is that if I can see a leader's most important number, the best work their team is doing to keep it on track or even over-deliver on it, and let's say they're behind. When I look at the work that they're doing, I see their most important number, I see their justification for it, I see the other things that they're measuring, I know within 15 minutes exactly where that leader needs to develop. And that's the surgical leadership development that every leader needs. What's holding them back the most from creating more value today? Let's lean in there. And then at any point in time, there's going to be something over all other things that are holding leaders back from creating more value, and just keep that in focus as you're doing your leadership development. Does that make sense, Lindsay, and how you think about it?
It absolutely does. As a leader, I just think all the time, you often have certain skills as an individual. We all do. We all have kind of our strengths, our toolkit that makes us get through life and that we accomplish past goals with, so that we have these tried and true moves, these signature moves, if you will. And sometimes they actually are things that become hindrance in new situations. I love how you said it's like not one size fits all, because I think the greatest leaders I've ever worked with, not only are they incredibly self-aware, willing to have hard conversations, but they're willing to pivot. They're willing to try new things and say, what worked before that got us here won't get us there now. This isn't working with this particular group or this industry or this season of life or this time, because the world is an amalgamation of change. Like, it's constantly ideating and pivoting, and there's so many factors that, we have to contend with. And so I love what you're saying about using this framework to inform those decisions. That's really powerful and makes a lot of sense. So currently, tell me a little about your business. You have the book. How can people get the book, and where can they learn more about what your process is?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the book is, again, titled Your Most Important Number. You can go to our website, which is etw.com, and you can get the book there, or you can find it in over 40,000 channels. Anywhere books are sold, you can find this book. And the audio book, I actually recorded right here in the studio, 25-minute interviews after each chapter for even more insights and background. The last chapter is actually a DIY chapter, so if you want to take a run at this yourself, and it actually works really well. I get really great messages from all over the world of people that read the book, and they're now running their companies this way, changing the language a little bit, giving everybody a most important number, and they're saying the results are just fantastic. Going from a lot of chaos and complexity, made it really simple. Instead of being a little bit behind each month or barely making the numbers, now they're overdriving. So yeah, the website ETW, you can find the book, and there's a couple other things that we do here. One is that we will help organizations implement this if they want. We have an internal consulting team that works with companies all over the world every single day, and I stay doing that work every day myself. I feel like I have to be connected to the front lines to make sure that I'm staying really current with what works in the real world. So we do that, and we have a growing number of externally certified consultants that can help folks do this as well.
That's cool.
And I also run CEO masterminds. We call it Execute, and you can find that on the website. And it's different than most of the others, like Vistage, YPO, EO, and a number of those that they could have 12 to 18 members, and it's great to have the community, but the big challenge they have is they have a superficial challenge, and you don't know enough about each other's organization to truly use a majority of your brain power to help them. And what I do in these organizations, these groups that we put together, is that we limit it to 8. It's a 1-day commitment a month, and every 2 months, we do a deep dive into everybody's business. We apply the MIND methodology to these CEO peer advisory groups, and the results are quite spectacular. And because everybody can see so deeply into each other's organization, it's easy to use all your brain power to help them. And usually when somebody brings up an issue or a problem, almost always it's a symptom of something else going on. And the more we know about a person's business, the easier it is to see the root cause of what's actually happening. And the mindset of the folks in these groups is that, hey, we've invested over half of our retirement money in this conglomerate made up of these 8 different businesses, and we want to make sure we get a really good return. So what do you want to know? What do you want to see happening? Where's their risk, et cetera? And the results are spectacular from that. And it's almost like we never have enough time to go as far as we want. But that's a pretty exciting thing,
That's really cool. So, I mean, you've been doing this with leaders in business and focusing on all kinds of different organizations, and now you're moving into families. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That sounds so exciting.
Yeah, my whole career so far has been about creating value within organizations and accelerating that value creation. And with my co-author, Scott Donnell, we wrote a book. We published it a couple months ago, and it's titled Value Creation Kid. And the subtitle is The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed. And what we're getting at there is that I think with the best of intentions, so many parents are trying to remove all struggle from their kids because they don't want them to have to struggle the way they did. And then when you fast forward and we launch them into adulthood, they're not ready to be an adult. They're not financially competent. They're not confident. They haven't, built any, real skills around being able to create value in the world. And so we're backing up saying, well, what would that environment look like? We've been working with hundreds of families, ensuring, because this is important to me, that it'll actually work in a low-income and middle-income family, especially low-income families. So we developed something we call the gravy stack method, and we outline it in the book. And the gravy stack method has 4 simple components. First is value creation. Second is house rules. Third is financial competency. And fourth is healthy struggle. So on the value creation side, there's 3 macro buckets you can create value in. First is material value. Second is emotional energy value. And third is spiritual value. And we try to help the kids sort of discover in this environment, what's your value creation superpower? And if parents start talking about value creation, they start thinking about that. And every kid has a yet to be discovered value creation superpower, and this helps them get there a lot faster. In fact, I believe the whole purpose of an education is to create value in the world, not get a good grade, get a diploma, get a degree, get a job. That's not very inspiring. But what if right at kindergarten, they came in and they said, hey, the whole purpose of an education is to create value in the world. How would you like to do that? Wow, are kids responding to that conversation, like big time. And then the second piece is house rules. So what are the expectations? So at every age, as children start to get older, what's their job for the family? What are the things they're expected to do?
Yeah.
And then there are expenses. As they get older, which expenses do they start picking up themselves? And then third, how do we give them opportunity to earn extra money? So they need to earn money and be able to sort of manage all this stuff and then be fully ready when they launch into adulthood. And then the third area in the gravy stack method is financial competency. So we teach financial literacy, but the application of it so they can actually be financially competent. And my co-author founded a company called Gravy Stack, and you can look at it at gravystack.com, but it's a financial literacy / competency app for kids. So
Wow.
how you earn money, save money, share money, spend money, invest money, etc. And there's over 100 games that they can go through to become more and more financially literate and eventually, of course, financially competent. And then the last part of the 4-part gravy stack method is healthy struggle. How do we design healthy struggles for our children, for all children, so they can learn to create more value out of those struggles? And there's something in the book we call the value creation cycle. And so there's a healthy struggle to develop a capability, and then that builds confidence. Don't stop there. Use that to create value. And then the more you do this, and each time you create a little bit more value, the more the kids and adults, for that matter, learn to trust healthy struggle. So when things are tough, they don't act like victims. They're like, yeah, I've done this before. I know I can get through it. And I've got a story I can share here in a bit about how I got on this track. But it's an interesting concept, and parents need to be okay watching their kids struggle. It's never a question that the kids are loved. I mean, they should always feel loved. However, I think a big part of a parent's job and their village or community is to help them develop into very self-reliant, value-creating adults that are all about healthy communities for themselves, their families, and any groups that they interact with. How does that resonate with you? I understand you have 3 boys,
Totally.
so how does that resonate?
100%. I'm like, I mean, everything you're talking about, I'm like, what's the name of the app again? Just to go back to that real quick. What's the name of the app?
Yeah, Gravy
Gravy
Stack. And you can find it on the website gravystack.com.
Cool. I just love that you're doing this.
And that's...
Yeah, that's perfect. Anyway, keep
Well,
going. So yeah, it does resonate with me completely.
Yeah, so I when I was growing up, I had it was an unhealthy, toxic, and in some ways dangerous home environment. There were some really bad people, but at about 7 years old, I had a neighbor ask me unsolicited, not a friend, hey, would you pull weeds in my garden for 25 cents an hour? And so I'm 61, so back then 25 cents I could buy 2 candy bars and have change. So this is great. So I'm doing that, and I'm exchanging my best efforts for her accumulated best efforts. And then I thought, well, this is a lot of hard work. I was doing it every couple of weeks. I wonder how I could earn even more money. And where I grew up, it snowed a lot in the wintertime. So I started shoveling snow, 50 cents a driveway, and I could do one every 30 minutes. So I just 4-folded my money. Well, that's great. And I had to, get the confidence to go knock on doors and ask and all that. And then I got a paper route. Then I had a couple of paper routes, and then a dishwasher, busboy, a cook. And by the time I was kicked out of the house, the beginning of my senior year in high school, I already bought my own vehicle. I was already financially competent and independent. I slept one night in my Chevy Blazer, no big deal. And the next night I had a roommate in an apartment. And it was a non-event. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I just kept going on this value creation cycle. And then I graduated high school in the 1980s. I made most of my money playing in rock and roll bands. And some years we played hundreds of nights a year. And it's like, well, that's really cool. And then I started my first business, second business, and then kept going. And I just learned to really trust that I can do anything I want to, but if there's going to be an amount of struggle to get there, to have the capability to actually do it. And so that's really been my journey, starting with pulling weeds. And it was a whole environment outside a house that really wasn't that healthy to that I could trust, and I could count on it. I could lean on it. And my siblings, a lot of them didn't fare nearly as well because they stayed in that environment.
Wow.
So I think it's super healthy for everyone. And so yes, I've been really good at material value creation. However, I think if I had a superpower, it's really more in the neighborhood of emotional energy value creation, positive emotional energy.
Totally.
I think it's the scarcest commodity on the planet. A lot of people say, well, time's the scarcest commodity because you never get it back. Well, I'd rather live 20%, a 20% shorter life with my emotional energy on 9 or 10 as opposed to a fuller life where it's only on 1 or 2 my entire life. It'd be such a better life.
Wow.
And so I think I've been really good at that. And even music, if kids, some of them aren't all about money, although I think we have to have enough money to maintain the lifestyle that we want and pursue our passions. And every child that I've talked to, and I've spoken to thousands of high school kids, when I ask, do you feel better about yourself when you're dependent on someone else, or if you're self-reliant? And they all say self-reliant, like instantly. So that's really important. But if their main motivator isn't making a whole bunch of money, and you don't have to, it's really about being fulfilled and I think raising, sort of collective human consciousness.
Wow.
It's emotional energy could be it. And one of my big ones was music. And, imagine a child writing a song that someday 1 billion people listen to it and uplifts them when they hear it. That's pretty incredible, what can happen. And then the whole spiritual side, what does that mean to you? It's different to everybody. But that's kind of my journey, and makes total sense. And I never got off the track, and I'm still on the track.
Oh, wow, Lee, it's so inspiring. I love that you took the heartache and the trials of your childhood and not only became a resilient individual from it, but you now are using the empathy that you've gained from that to try to empower others to be able to have the same levers that you use to get out of your situation. I think that's really inspiring. I think it's so undervalued, this emotional, when you said the most scarce commodity is emotional, did you say that again? It's emotional.
Well, positive emotional energy is the scarcest commodity on the planet.
Wow, that is like quote. That should be like an Instagram quote, because there's no doubt in my mind that that's true. Because as you said, you say that you've got an incredible business making gazillion dollars, but if you're depleted inside and emotionally dead, and I just recently was at an event with a ton of very successful people. We're talking some of those successful people in the world, A-list celebrities, billionaires, supermodels. I mean, it was a room filled with people, and the emotional tenor there was not one of light and happiness and goodness. It was like people were hurting. Like I could really feel it. I could feel there was this, it was like palpable. And I remember thinking, man, like power, there's so much power in one room, and yet it's not being used in a way that feels, at least to me. And I was obviously making my judgments about it, but I really think I'm intuitive about some of that resonance. But it was like, man, there's, this event that I went to, I just remember thinking it was a pretty intimate event. And people seemed really unhappy because they were unwarm and they were unfriendly and they were guarded and they were closed down and seemed really self-focused. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, oh, wow, like all this power and all this incredible platform. And yet people are just feeling, they're so parochial. So like, in their own heads. And anyway, it's fascinating what you say. So I couldn't agree with you more that emotional, intelligence and happiness and joy and peace are the most important things in this life. So I think that's really, really profound what you're saying. Lee, tell me a little bit about when you look at families, like having worked with a lot of executives and probably high achievers, I've worked in the world of philanthropy for 20 years of my career, and I've worked with a lot of ultra high net worth families. And there's a big dynamic that happens in the next gen wealth inheritors of the people that were not the principals to build the wealth, and them inheriting wealth, and then the emotional turbulence that comes from suddenly receiving money they didn't work for, and how that can create all kinds of things. unworthiness to receive it, insecurities about their lack of self-reliance, not knowing who their real friends are, even things like entitlement, things that can come from that too. There's like a cost to some of it. And I guess it's all relative too, because I do work in the developing world all the time, and relative to the net worth that people in Africa that we work with, or Southeast Asia or South America, I mean, what I'm giving my children creates those same dynamics to some extent on a relative scale. Does that make sense? We see it all the time. Like I'm giving more financial abundance and security to my kids than I had growing up, And so I'm seeing some of the cost of some of that. It's a unique thing. Do you ever help families work through that? Because when you're focusing so much on the kid becoming self-reliant, I'm sure that plays deeply into how the parents actually, where they sit financially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and absolutely. And it goes into that category of healthy struggle. It's so easy for an affluent, family, the parents, to just make it easy. Whatever the kids want, they get whatever they want. They get a nice car when they're, of age to drive, and go to the best colleges if that's really what it's supposed to be about, and trendiest clothes and everything else. That's not healthy struggle. And so how do we design a journey to where they can be self-reliant adults? And one really key point here is to be intrinsically motivated, not extrinsically motivated. And if you make your primary drive and motivation, and I think in a lot of ways, purpose or identity, creating value in the world, all of a sudden, it doesn't matter if you don't get enough TikTok likes. It doesn't matter if you're not in the cool kids club. It doesn't matter if, you lost a competition, whether as a kid or as an adult in business. You're just doubling down and creating more value. You make that really what it's all about. So imagine, like, a personal story for me. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and there's a chance it could take my hands out of the game, and so I wouldn't be able to play guitar. What if I identified as a guitar player, and that happened? What would that do to me? It would crush me. But I identify as somebody that creates a lot of emotional energy and material value for my clients, and I have my own way of thinking about spirituality and the value that I create over there. I would just have a couple more hours a day to do other things to create even more value. And what if a child identifies as the superstar football player, and then they get injured and they can't play, and it crushes them? But if their thing was creating emotional energy, spiritual and material value, they would just shift the focus to continue to create the value. So it's the same for, like, you describing that event. It sounds to me, I wasn't there, like a very competitive event, some of the top people in the world, and look at me and where I'm going, and I'm ahead of you, and it's like this competitive ladder thing. And I love competition. I love to win. I love to compete. But when I lose, I just learn a ton, and I keep going, and I'm still happy. I'm a happy warrior, if you will. But if you make it about that thing instead of creating value, I think it makes for super unhappy adults, and it can crush kids. And so the point here again is I really want to drive towards creating intrinsic motivation within children, and they're just not going to be influenced by all the other stuff going on out there that most kids today are influenced by. You won't have the depression and all the other, terrible things that really expose themselves as we went through this COVID pandemic.
I love that, intrinsic motivation instead of extrinsic motivation. Our culture is so much in the West, so much set on external motivation. It's, what do people think of me? What is the positive feedback loop? I mean, I have been so susceptible to that, like caring so much about, how do I create values for others so that I can then feel that they value and love me, so that I feel okay with myself. And the healing journey has been, and I think for a lot of people, I think this is a very human experience. I know I'm not alone in the struggle with this, is to learn how to have the joy and be like, I feel really good about what I'm doing for me. And then, those who appreciate and value the value I create will be attracted to me. And then there's a very virtuous cycle from that. It's kind of like, it's all the abundance is pouring outward, not trying to gain it, in a transaction. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I love what you're talking about. So do you have a family? I mean, look how fun you got all those instruments behind you, and I'm so glad you still have use of your hands. And how is your health going? And tell me a little about you personally too.
I've never been married. I don't have children, but I've taught martial arts for decades, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of kids. And in high schools, I'll speak to high school seniors, typically, sometimes juniors, and smaller groups of 20 to 50, espousing the virtues of entrepreneurship. And I've spoken to thousands of them, and I just love this. And I tell the kids that you're going to be running the world that I age out in. I'm never going to stop working, but I will eventually age out. And even though I am a science fiction buff, I really enjoy those kind of movies and books. I don't want to live in a dystopian future, so I want it to be amazing. And you're going to be leading the world that I age out in. And anybody that creates a job is a hero of mine. And I tell the kids that when you create a business and you create a job and you're paying somebody, that's one more person that can contribute to supporting their family. That's amazing.
That really is
absolutely amazing.
That is amazing.
And so I really look at our children and I say we have to create the conditions, just like I do in companies when I work with organizations. We have to create the conditions that allow them to figure out how to create value, and real win-win value, not I got mine and somebody else lost. If you want to sustain something for the long run, it's got to be a win for both parties. And if we can get our kids going in that direction, it's going to be an amazing world for us. Absolutely. Maybe I'll retire on the big island of Hawaii one of these days.
Do it, brother.
It'll be incredible.
It's incredible here. Yeah, I love this. What an edifying conversation. And I can't wait to read your book. I wish I could have read it ahead of time. I was traveling pretty extensively, but I would love to learn more. How can people get access to, aside from the tools at Gravy Stack, how can they get access to getting maybe one-on-one coaching for their family or for their business in terms of, is the best way to reach you just through the website? Is that the best way?
Yeah, on the first book that we talked about, Your Most Important Number, if you go to my website, etw.com, you can contact us. We can help you. There's a lot of free resources there. So happy to help. If you're a CEO and interested in a much more powerful, growth-minded CEO peer advisory group, we would love to have you join one of our groups. For the second book, Value Creation Kid, if you go to the gravystack.com website, you'll see the book there, but you can also find Value Creation Kid in over 40,000 channels as well. And Scott Donnell and I, Scott, my co-author, we recorded joint interviews after every section in the book, so you get even more if you listen to the audiobook. And on the website, to get to your question, there are a lot of free resources. I have a number of families around the country that have downloaded the worksheets, and they've got them up on the refrigerator, and the kids are filling them out. The parents are filling them out. So you don't even need the app to get going. It's a pretty simple Gravy Stack method to put in your household. The app makes it super easy to hold it all together. And then we have parenting groups that you can find out about on the gravystack.com website.
Incredible.
And I think we're going to be doing our first, in September, our first 2-day workshop for parents on the Gravy Stack method and how to really deploy this. And so excited about doing that. And I just have to share one little story here. So a family in Boston, the father texts me, and they started the Gravy Stack method, which is, value creation, house rules, financial competency, and healthy struggle. And he texts me, he says, my daughter, this is what she said to me. And his daughter's 9. And she said, "Thank you, Daddy, for leaving the dirty dishes for me to do to help me on my value creation journey." Unbelievable.
That is so sweet.
Unbelievable.
So sweet that she had that kind of awareness.
This is happening.
Yeah.
It just makes the point, and there's hundreds of examples like this where they get the language, it resonates, it makes sense.
That's so great. Well, Lee, thank you so much for coming on the show. Just to end, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners? We have a lot of, high achieving and high net worth and high capacity and also high character people, just wonderful people that have good hearts. A lot of the topics we talk about are things that are, trying to self-actualize or do good in the world or have an impact. That's a lot of the narrative and conversation that we have on this podcast. So Is there anything else you want to share or leave with us that might be like a gold nugget we can take from the interview?
Yeah, I would say that if you want to have a personal most important number, mine is my internal fulfillment quotient. And so am I over time becoming more and more fulfilled because I'm creating value in the world the way I set out to do? I think that's why I'm here. I think it's what I'm really good at. I enjoy doing it. I don't need to work, but I'm going to do this as long as I can, hopefully for decades to come. And I think when you do that and align everything to it, it just really builds that intrinsic motivation. And I recommend, even if you don't have children, reading the book Value Creation Kid, The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed. There's so many lessons in there for adults as well. I think that'd just be a great read.
Well, thank you so much, Lee. I'm very grateful for your coming on the show today, and I can't wait I'm literally going to immediately get this on Audible, right? You can find it on Audible, get both of those books and check them out. So
yes,
thanks again for coming on the show, Lee. Appreciate you.
All right, Lindsay, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Do you need help with the next steps for your financial plan? Think Capita. Capita is a financial network built around you. They have a team of financial advisors, CPAs, estate attorneys, Medicare providers, and Social Security experts to help you accomplish your financial goals. Call to schedule a complimentary consultation at 801-566-5058 or visit their website at www.capitafinancialnetwork.com. You can also check out their financial education podcast, The Financial Call, available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and YouTube.